Hello, my wonderful family. I hope you're all having a wonderful time. You all feel like family to me, and I always strive to give you the best experience. I've placed only one ad during the story at the 10-minute mark. The rest are after the story ends. This way, you can enjoy it without interruptions. So please watch till the end. Like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Your love and support mean everything to me. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and the distant promise of winter. Elisa John pulled her jacket tighter around her as she stepped into Grayson's antique store, a place that smelled of dust, old books, and forgotten memories. The bell above the door jingled softly, echoing through the dimly lit space. Elisa wasn't looking for anything in particular. Just another evening of escaping the real world, of hiding away in the aisles of discarded relics. And then, she saw it, an old Polaroid camera, tucked away on a wooden shelf, covered in a thin layer of dust. Its black body was scratched and faded, as if it had seen things it wasn't meant to. A strange shiver crawled up her spine as she picked it up, feeling the unexpected chill of the plastic against her fingers. Interested in that one? Elisa turned, to see Mr. Grayson, the elderly owner, watching her with an odd expression, something between curiosity and... Was that concern? Yeah. How much? She asked. Grayson hesitated. That's an old one. Been here longer than I can remember. His gaze flickered toward the camera as though expecting it to move on its own. Elisa smiled, brushing off the eerie vibe. Well, consider it sold. She handed over a crumpled $20 bill and tucked the camera into her bag. As she left the store, the bell above the door jingled again, but this time the sound sent a chill straight through her bones. Later that night, Elisa sat cross-legged on her bed, inspecting her new find. It had that distinct vintage charm, and something about it felt personal, like it had belonged to someone important. Her best friend, Jake Sullivan, had texted her earlier. Jake, movie night at Rachel's. You coming? Elisa, only if... There's popcorn. Jake, duh. Get your ass over here. She grabbed the camera and tossed it into her bag before heading out. The night was filled with laughter, the crackle of popcorn, and the glow of horror movies playing on the TV. Elisa, Jake, Rachel, Olivia, Liam, and Sophie were huddled together, watching an old 80s slasher flick when Elisa remembered the camera. Hey guys, she said, pulling it out. Check this out. Rachel raised an eyebrow. What is that? Some ancient artifact? Elisa smirked. It's a Polaroid. Let's take a picture. Jake groaned. I swear, if I look ugly in this, I'm blaming you. Elisa aimed the camera at them and pressed the shutter. A bright flash filled the room, followed by the whirring sound of the film developing. The photo slid out, dark at first before the image began to form. As they waited for it to fully develop, Olivia suddenly shivered. Did it just get colder in here? She asked, rubbing her arms. Rachel scoffed. Stop being dramatic. It's just a picture. Elisa picked up the photo, smiling at their goofy expressions, until her breath caught in her throat. There was something else in the picture, a dark figure, barely visible, standing just behind Olivia. Guys, Elisa whispered, holding up the photo. Who the hell is that? The room fell silent. Jake took the picture, examining it with narrowed eyes. That's weird. Liam chuckled nervously. Maybe it's just a smudge or a reflection? Rachel scoffed. Yeah, or maybe it's your ghost boyfriend, Olivia. But Olivia wasn't laughing. She stared at the picture, her hands trembling. I don't like this. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, suffocating. The temperature had dropped, and in the darkness beyond the window, something moved. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Her room was dark. The only sound was the ticking of her bedside clock. But there was something wrong, something off. She turned over, pulling her blanket closer, and then she heard it. A soft whisper. Her breath hitched. The air felt heavy, pressing against her chest. She reached for her phone and turned on the flashlight, scanning the room. Nothing. Exhaling shakily, she set the phone down and turned over again. That's when she saw it. A tall, shadowy figure stood in the corner of her room, just barely visible in the dim light. Her body froze, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She tried to scream, but her throat felt sealed shut. The figure moved closer. Her limbs refused to obey her, paralyzed with terror. The whisper returned, this time closer, right by her ear. Smile. The last thing Olivia saw was a flash of white, as if a camera had gone off in the darkness, and then silence. The next morning, Elisa woke up to 5 missed calls from Rachel. Her stomach sank. Something was wrong. She quickly dialed back, her fingers trembling slightly. Rachel picked up on the first ring. Elisa. Olivia's missing. The words hit like a gut punch. What do you mean, missing? Her mom called me, Rachel said, voice shaky. She wasn't in her bed this morning. The door was still locked from the inside, but she's just gone. Elisa felt a chill creep down her spine. Did you check with her dad? Maybe Elisa. Rachel cut her off, her voice low and terrified. Her phone is still here. Her shoes, her jacket. It's like she vanished into thin air. A suffocating silence filled the line. Elisa thought about the photo. The dark figure behind Olivia. The whisper she swore she had imagined. Smile. A sharp knock at the door made Elisa jump. She turned to see her uncle, Detective Ryan John, standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. You need to come with me, he said. At the police station, Olivia's mom sat in the waiting area, sobbing into her hands. Detective Ryan led Elisa to his office, shutting the door behind them. You were the last person to see Olivia last night. Tell me everything. Elisa hesitated, then told him about the Polaroid camera, the picture, the shadowy figure. Ryan raised an eyebrow. So, you think a haunted camera made Olivia disappear? His voice was laced with skepticism. Elisa clenched her fists. I know how it sounds, but it was there. We all saw it. Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe something happened to Olivia. If you remember anything else, let me know. As Elisa left the office, she caught sight of Olivia's photo, the same one they had taken last night, now sealed in an evidence bag. The dark figure in the image. It was closer now. That night, Elisa, Jake, Rachel, Liam, and Sophie gathered at Liam's house, the atmosphere tense. Rachel clutched her arms. We need to get rid of that camera. Liam frowned. Burn it. I already tried. Elisa's voice was barely above a whisper. The fire wouldn't catch on it. Jake ran a hand through his hair. This doesn't make sense. Cameras don't just kill people. Then how do you explain Olivia? Rachel shot back. A loud bang from the hallway made them all jump. Liam, closest to the door, swallowed hard and stood up. Probably my cat. But deep down, they all knew better. Liam stepped into the dark hallway. The others waited, holding their breath. A moment passed, then another. Then, a blood-curdling scream tore through the silence. They ran toward the noise. Liam was on the floor, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were wide open, his mouth frozen mid-scream. The Polaroid camera lay beside him. A fresh photo slid out. Elisa picked it up with trembling fingers. It was Liam, and behind him, the shadowy figure was now inches away, and it was grinning. The weight of Liam's lifeless body pressed on Elisa's chest like a heavy stone. Rachel was crying, Jake was pacing, and Sophie just stood there, staring at the photo in Elisa's trembling hands. The figure in the image. It was grinning. The police arrived within minutes, but none of them could explain what had happened. Liam must have fallen, an officer muttered. Snapped his neck on impact. Elisa wanted to scream. He didn't fall. Something took him, and the worst part? The camera was still there, untouched. They knew they had to find out where the camera came from. Elisa, Rachel, and Jake skipped school the next day and went straight to Grayson's antique store. The old man visibly tensed when he saw them. Elisa slammed the camera onto the counter. "What the hell did you sell me?" Grayson sighed heavily, running a hand over his face. "I told you. It's been here for years. I don't know where it came from." Jake narrowed his eyes. "Then why do you look scared?" The old man hesitated before finally speaking. "Because I've seen this before." A chill ran through Elisa. "What do you mean?" Grayson pulled out a dusty, yellowed newspaper from behind the counter. The headline sent a shockwave through them. "Family of 5 found dead. The only clue? A single photograph." The article was from 1989. The photo in question was printed in the paper, and in the background of the image, the same shadowy figure. It had been happening for decades. Rachel took a step back. "This isn't real. It can't be real." But it was, and now it was coming for them. That night, Rachel was alone in her room, staring at her phone. A new photo notification had appeared. Her heart stopped. She hadn't taken a picture. With shaking hands, she clicked on the image. It was her. But not just her. The dark figure was there, standing right behind her. Her breath hitched. She turned, scanning the empty room. Nothing. And then her closet door creaked open. Something stepped out. The last thing Rachel saw was the blinding white flash of a camera. And then, darkness. Jake and Elisa found out the next morning. Rachel was gone, just like Olivia, just like Liam. Elisa was breaking. They only had one clue left. The newspaper article mentioned an address. An old, abandoned house at the edge of town. The last known owners of the cursed camera. Jake clenched his fists. "We end this. Tonight." Elisa nodded. They had no idea what they were about to face. The air around the old house was heavy, as if the darkness itself was alive. Elisa and Jake stood at the rusted gate, staring at the decaying structure. "This place feels wrong," Jake whispered. Elisa took a shaky breath. "It's where it started. It has to be where it ends." They stepped forward. The front door was already open, as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, dust coated every surface. The air was thick with the scent of rot. A faint whisper echoed through the halls. "Smile." Jake clenched his jaw. "Tell me you heard that." Elisa swallowed hard. "I did." They searched the rooms, heartbeats pounding. Then they found it, an old wooden chest locked with a rusted latch. Jake kicked it open. Inside was a diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. Elisa picked it up, her fingers shaking as she read the first page. October 15th, 1989. We should have never taken the picture. Her blood ran cold. The diary belonged to Eleanor Grayson, the daughter of the family. From the newspaper article, she wrote about a man who came to their home, selling an instant camera. A camera that took photos of people before they died. At first, her family thought it was a joke. Then, her little brother disappeared. Then her mother. Her father tried to burn the camera. But just like Elisa, he failed. The last entry sent a shiver down her spine. It won't let me leave. The more we try to fight it, the closer it gets. I saw it in my reflection today. It's waiting. Watching. I know I'm next. There were no more entries. Just a photo tucked between the pages. Elisa pulled it out. It was Eleanor. And behind her, the figure was there. Its face closer than ever. Its mouth was open, like it was about to whisper in her ear. Elisa dropped the photo. A loud bang shook the house. The walls cracked. The whispers grew louder. Smile. The camera flashed. Jake screamed. Elisa turned. Her stomach dropped. Jake was frozen, his eyes wide. The Polaroid camera lay on the floor, a fresh photo sliding out. Elisa picked it up, praying, begging that it wasn't what she thought it was, but it was. Jake. And the figure was no longer in the background. It was right in front of him. Jake collapsed. Elisa screamed. She shook him, but he was already gone. The photo burned in her hands, turning to ashes. The camera just sat there, waiting, like it wanted her to pick it up. Elisa backed away. No, 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 no. Then the flash went off again. Elisa ran, out of the house, into the night. She could feel it chasing her, the whispers growing louder. Smile. She ran to Grayson's antique store, burst through the door. The old man turned, eyes filled with terror. "You took another picture, didn't you?" he whispered. Elisa was crying now. "It killed Jake. It's going to kill me next." Grayson's hands shook. "There's only one way to end it," he said. Elisa stared at him. "How?" Grayson took a deep breath. "You have to take a picture of the one who started it all." Elisa's heart stopped. "You mean—" Grayson nodded. "The man who sold the camera." Elisa's breath was shaky. "The man who sold the camera?" she whispered. Grayson nodded. "He's the only way to stop this." Elisa felt her stomach twist. But he'd be dead by now, right? This started decades ago. Grayson's expression darkened. "He isn't dead. He never was." Elisa's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Grayson's hands trembled as he pulled out an old black and white photo. It showed a man in a suit, holding the cursed camera. His face was blurred, as if the photo itself was trying to erase him. Elisa's hands grew cold. "Who is he?" Grayson's voice was barely a whisper. They called him the photographer. Elisa knew she had no choice. If she wanted to survive, she had to find the photographer and take his picture. But where would she start? Then she remembered. The diary. She flipped through Eleanor Grayson's pages, searching for anything that mentioned him. Then, a name. Jonathan Wells. Elisa's heart skipped. There was an address. It was old, but it was something. She turned to Grayson. "I need to go there." Grayson hesitated, then handed her an old Polaroid camera. "Take his picture," he said. "And whatever you do, don't let him take yours." Elisa nodded. Then she left, heading straight for the house of Jonathan Wells. Elisa stood in front of the house. It was deep in the woods, hidden from the world. The place was rotting, like time itself had abandoned it. Elisa's hands shook as she pushed the door open. It creaked loudly. Inside, the air was stale. Dust-covered photographs lined the walls. Some were old, some were recent. Her stomach turned when she saw Rachel, Liam, and Jake, all in black and white. Their faces were blank, erased. And then she saw him, standing at the end of the hallway, watching. Jonathan Wells. He was tall, thin, and dressed in an old-fashioned suit. His eyes were hollow. His skin was pale as paper. "You found me," he said, his voice like a whisper from a dream. Elisa's fingers tightened around the camera. "I know what you did," she said. "You started this." Wells smiled. "No, my dear," he said softly. "I didn't start it. I was merely chosen." Elisa felt a chill crawl up her spine. "What are you?" Wells tilted his head. "A memory," he whispered. "A shadow of what once was." Elisa took a step back. "You can't run," he murmured. And then he lifted a camera. The flash exploded. Elisa screamed. The light blinded her. Her body felt frozen in place. She felt herself fading, like her soul was being ripped from her body. She was becoming a photograph. No. With every ounce of strength, she raised her own camera. She clicked the shutter. The flash went off. For a moment, everything was still. Then Jonathan Wells let out a horrible, inhuman scream. His skin cracked. His body twisted unnaturally. The photographs on the walls began to burn. Elisa dropped to the floor, gasping for breath. The photo slid out of her camera. It showed Jonathan Wells. But this time, his face was clear. And in his hollow eyes, she saw pure terror. The curse was turning on him. His body crumpled into the ashes of the burning photographs. The house shook violently. Elisa ran. She burst outside, just as the house collapsed into nothing. The curse was broken, or so she thought, because in her hands the photo of Jonathan Wells was still there, and his lips were curling into a smile. Elisa thought it was over. The house was gone. The photographer was dead. The curse was broken. But the photo of Jonathan Wells was still in her hands, and as she stared at it, his smile widened. The horror wasn't over. It was only beginning. Elisa tried to destroy the photo. She ripped it apart, but the pieces stitched themselves back together. She burned it, but the ashes formed back into the picture. She threw it into the river, but when she got home, it was waiting on her bed. Elisa's body shook. She wasn't free. She was still trapped in the curse. And then her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. It was a picture of her, taken from behind. Elisa's heart stopped. She was alone in the house, or so she thought. A cold breath touched her neck. Elisa spun around. Nothing. Then, a whisper. Smile. The lights flickered, the walls darkened, and in the reflection of the window, Jonathan Wells stood behind her. But this time, his face wasn't blurred. His eyes were hollow. His mouth stretched too wide, like he was about to swallow her whole. Elisa screamed. She grabbed the cursed camera and took his picture. But nothing happened, because this time, he wasn't the one trapped in the curse. She was. Elisa's body went cold. Jonathan leaned closer. "You thought it was that easy," he whispered. Elisa stumbled backward. "You're dead," she shouted. "I took your picture. The curse is over." Jonathan laughed. "The curse doesn't end, Elisa. It only finds a new host." Elisa's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't the survivor. She was the new photographer. Her phone buzzed again. Another picture. It was a stranger. A girl, sitting in a cafe, and, under it, 2 words. Take it. Elisa felt sick. She had 2 choices. Take the picture. Pass the curse on. Live. Refuse. And let the curse consume her. She looked at the camera in her hands, felt the weight of it. Her body ached. Her mind whispered to obey. Take it. The voice of the curse was inside her now, the same way it had been inside Jonathan and the photographer before him. Elisa looked at the picture on her phone. The girl in the cafe, completely unaware, completely innocent. Would she do it? Would she take the picture? Or would she fight back, no matter the cost? She lifted the camera. Her finger hovered over the button. The curse laughed in her head. Smile, Elisa screamed. The camera flashed. But she didn't take the stranger's picture. She turned the camera on herself and took her own. The photo slid out. For a moment, nothing. Then, agony. Her vision blurred. Her skin cracked. The room shook violently. Jonathan Wells screamed. Elisa felt herself fading. The curse had nowhere left to go. She was breaking it, or dying with it. She didn't know which. When Elisa opened her eyes, she was outside. The house was gone. The camera was gone, and in her hands, the photo of herself was missing. She took a breath. A deep, shaky breath. And then a shadow moved behind her. She turned, heart pounding. Nothing. But as she walked away, her phone buzzed one last time. A final message. No picture. Just 2 words. Thank you. Elisa smiled. Not because she was happy, but because she wasn't sure if she was still Elisa at all. Dr. Richard Graves tightened his grip on the steering wheel as his car crawled down the winding dirt road, the towering trees on either side leaning in like silent sentinels. The headlights barely pierced the thick, suffocating fog that clung to the ground like a living entity. The GPS had stopped working miles ago, and his phone had lost all signal the moment he entered Blackwood Hollow. This place feels like a graveyard, he muttered under his breath, glancing at the road ahead. The letter from Blackwood Manor had been precise. He was to arrive before midnight. His patient, Eleanor Blackwood, was waiting for his evaluation. But despite his medical background and years of psychiatric experience, something about this case unsettled him. The Blackwood family was infamous, an old lineage tied to tragedy, superstition, and unexplained deaths. The locals whispered that their house was cursed, that the spirits of those who had died from Blackwood-manufactured rifles still roamed the endless corridors of their mansion. Richard didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in trauma, hallucinations, and psychological disorders. Yet, as the towering silhouette of Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a chill crept down his spine. The house stood like a monstrous relic of a forgotten time, a grotesque maze of towers and extensions that seemed to have no logic, as if rooms had been added randomly, spiraling in madness. The windows were dark, like hollowed-out eyes staring back at him. Something about the place felt wrong. As he pulled into the massive iron gates, they groaned open on their own. He paused. No guard, no security, just the automated opening of the gate, or something unseen pushing it open. Shaking off the unease, Richard drove through, parking in the gravel driveway. He stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against the loose stones. A cold wind howled through the trees, whispering like 1,000 unseen voices. A woman was standing at the door, Claire Blackwood, Eleanor's niece. "You must be Dr. Graves," she said, her voice quiet. She looked pale, almost sickly, with dark circles under her eyes. Richard nodded. "Yes, I apologize for the late hour. Claire hesitated. Are you sure you want to stay here? The question felt wrong, like a warning. Richard frowned. I was invited, wasn't I? Claire swallowed and stepped aside. Then, welcome to Blackwood Manor. The moment he crossed the threshold, a cold, heavy presence wrapped around him, like stepping into another world. The air was dense, thick with the scent of old wood, dust, and something faintly metallic. Blood, he dismissed the thought. The interior was worse than he imagined. Candlelight flickered against the wallpaper, which was peeling at the edges as if the house itself was decaying. Portraits lined the hallway, paintings of the Blackwood ancestors, but their eyes seemed to follow him. The corridors twisted unnaturally, as if the house had been expanded in a frenzy of paranoia. Doors were sealed shut with iron locks, and some had symbols carved into the wood, ancient and unrecognizable. Eleanor is waiting in her chamber, Claire said, leading him through the dimly lit halls. As they walked, Richard felt something behind him, not someone. Something. A breath on his neck, a faint whisper, too low to make out. He spun around. Nothing. Claire didn't react, as if she was used to it. How many people live here? He asked. Claire hesitated. Just me and Eleanor. And the servants? Another hesitation. They left. A long time ago. Richard didn't press further, but a sinking feeling settled in his gut. When he entered Eleanor's chamber, he found her sitting by a massive fireplace. She was older than he expected, frail, dressed in deep black, her fingers adorned with heavy rings. Her gaze met his, sharp and knowing. "You don't believe in them, do you, Dr. Graves?" she said, her voice almost a whisper. Richard adjusted his glasses. Them? The ones who whisper in the walls. A cold shiver ran through him. You mean the spirits? Eleanor smiled faintly. Call them what you will. But they know you're here. Richard glanced at Claire, who looked away. You requested a psychiatric evaluation, he said, trying to steer the conversation back to reality. You believe the house is haunted. Why? Eleanor chuckled softly. Because it is. She motioned toward the fireplace. The flames flickered unnaturally, casting twisted shadows on the walls. Built this house to keep them in. Every room is a prison for a soul lost to our rifles. They whisper, they watch, and if I stop building... A loud bang echoed from the corridor. Richard flinched. Claire froze, her face draining of color. Eleanor's smile disappeared. They don't like you. Richard forced a breath. It's just the wind. Eleanor didn't argue. That night, Richard was given a guest room. The house groaned around him like it was breathing. As he undressed, he noticed something strange. A small, hand-carved wooden rifle placed on the nightstand. He hadn't seen it before. He picked it up. It was old, polished, and wet. His fingers came away red, blood. The door creaked open behind him, slowly, painfully. His heart pounded. Claire? No answer. He turned, expecting to see Claire or Eleanor. But instead, a figure stood in the doorway. Not a person. Not alive. A soldier, pale, with hollowed-out eyes and a missing jaw, his uniform torn, blood-stained. Richard couldn't move. The soldier raised a ghostly rifle and fired. A deafening gunshot exploded in the room. Richard fell backward, gasping. His chest was intact. No bullet wound. The figure was gone. The door was still open, but the hallway beyond was pitch black. A whisper slid through the air, so close to his ear that it sent a violent shudder down his spine. "Welcome to the Blackwood Curse, Doctor." Richard couldn't breathe. The rifle was still in his hands, and this time it was whispering to him. Richard shot up in bed, gasping for breath. For a moment, he thought it was morning, but the room was exactly as he left it. Dark, suffocating, and unbearably cold. His clothes were damp with sweat, and his ears rang from the gunshot sound that had woken him. Slowly, he turned his gaze toward the nightstand. The wooden rifle was still there. Only now, it was gone from his hand, and standing upright on its own. His breath hitched. Impossible. He reached for it cautiously, but before his fingers could touch it, the rifle tipped forward and crashed onto the floor. The moment it hit the ground, the door to his room slammed, shut violently. The whole room shook. The window rattled as if something was trying to break in or out. Then, from just beyond the door, a whisper. Low. Hollow. Too close to be real. "Let us in, Doctor." Richard stumbled backward, knocking over the oil lamp on the nightstand. His breathing was too fast, his pulse erratic. This was not a hallucination. Something was here, and it wanted him. Morning finally came, though it did little to wash away the choking sense of dread hanging over the house. Richard spent the day trying to regain his composure. He convinced himself that his exhaustion had caused the hallucinations. He was a man of science, after all. But as he roamed the house, the portraits seemed different. The paintings of the Blackwood ancestors. Their eyes had shifted. The previous night, they had been staring straight ahead. Now, they were staring at him. His stomach twisted. His mind screamed for logic. He took a deep breath and turned away, but as soon as his back was turned, he heard it. A slow creak. He spun back around. The portraits had moved closer. Not the frames, just the figures inside them. Where once they had been standing in the distance, now their faces were right up against the canvas, eyes hollow, lips curled into unnatural, knowing smiles. Richard staggered backward. He wasn't alone in this house, and they were watching. Desperate for fresh air, Richard decided to leave the manor for a while. He grabbed his coat and strode toward the front door. But the moment he touched the handle, the door wouldn't budge. He pulled harder. It was locked. No, sealed. The house wouldn't let him leave. His heart pounded as he checked the windows. Every single one was now bolted shut. He ran to another hallway, tried the side doors. All locked. A feeling of pure, undiluted horror began creeping up his spine. This wasn't just a haunted house. It was a trap, a prison, and he was now part of it. As Richard walked down one of the longer corridors, something strange happened. The hallway stretched. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but with every step forward, the end of the hallway moved further away. He turned, intending to go back, but the way behind him had disappeared. The walls were shifting, twisting like a living organism. Then, footsteps, not his own, coming from behind him. Slow, deliberate, like boots scraping against the old wooden floor. Richard's breath came shallow. He didn't want to turn around, but he had to. And when he did, a shadow stood at the far end of the corridor. A tall, looming figure, dressed in a tattered military uniform, its face missing entirely, just a void of darkness where its features should have been. The figure raised a gun. Richard ran. He sprinted down the hallway, but the footsteps behind him grew faster, closer. Gun cocked. He felt the bullet before he heard the shot. An invisible force struck his shoulder, sending him crashing against the wall. The pain was excruciating, burning like fire. He scrambled to his feet, clutching his shoulder. There was no wound, just the feeling of a bullet embedded deep in his bones. The shadowy soldier was gone, but the bullet's pain remained. Richard realized, with horrific certainty, the ghosts in this house weren't just haunting him. They were hurting him. That night, Claire found him in the library, poring over ancient records of the Blackwood family. She hesitated before speaking. "You look pale." Richard didn't look up. "I found something." Claire took a cautious step closer. "What?" He pushed forward a faded photograph, an old military unit. The men were posed formally, their faces blank, except one. At the back, half hidden in shadow, was the soldier from the hallway. Richard's voice was hollow. "That thing that attacked me? It's real, isn't it?" Claire's face turned pale. Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't need to answer. Her silence was enough. That night, Richard barely slept. The walls whispered to him, not in one voice, in hundreds, crying, begging, screaming. "They won't stop until you finish it," a voice rasped. Richard bolted upright. "Finish what?" he whispered. No response, only laughter. Low, cruel. The manor itself was alive, and it was just beginning to play with him. Richard stood before the grand mirror in his room, rubbing his temples. He looked exhausted, his skin pale, his eyes sunken, from sleepless nights. As he reached for the glass of water on his nightstand, something made him freeze. His reflection didn't move. A chill ran down his spine. Slowly, he turned his head to the left. His reflection stared straight ahead. A heartbeat passed, then another, and then the reflection smiled. Richard staggered backward, knocking over the glass. Water spilled across the floor, but he barely noticed. The reflection's eyes darkened. Its mouth moved, whispering, but there was no sound. Then, suddenly, a voice, right behind him. "You can't escape us, Doctor." Richard spun around, his breath catching in his throat. No one was there. He turned back to the mirror. The reflection was gone. Only a dark void remained, and something inside it was watching. Later that day, Richard found Claire in the library, her hands trembling as she flipped through an old ledger filled with names. Names of the dead. "Tell me the truth, Claire," Richard demanded, voice strained. She didn't look up. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." Claire hesitated, then exhaled shakily. "The Blackwood Manor is a doorway, a passage between the living and the dead." Richard's stomach twisted. "You mean ghosts?" "Not just ghosts." Claire's eyes darkened. "Some of them never were human." The word sent a cold shiver through Richard's body. She continued, "My mother used to tell me, once you enter this house, it marks you. It doesn't just haunt you, it keeps you." Richard's breath caught in his throat. Was that why he couldn't leave? That night, Richard left his room, unable to shake the feeling that someone was watching him. The hallway was silent, too silent. As he stepped forward, the oil lamps flickered, the air grew thick. Then a loud gunshot. Richard gasped, his body jerking violently as if he had been shot. His vision blurred. He stumbled backward, and suddenly he was back in his bed, heart pounding, breathing ragged. The room was exactly as he left it, but something was wrong. The clock on the wall was ticking backward. He wasn't waking up from a nightmare, he was trapped in one. The door creaked open on its own. Richard stepped outside and froze. The hallway was different. The walls were no longer aged and decayed. They looked new, pristine. Voices echoed from downstairs. Laughter, conversation, the sound of clinking glasses. He hurried down the hall and peered over the railing. A lavish party was unfolding in the grand ballroom. Men in Victorian suits, women in elegant gowns, the air thick with perfume and candle smoke. Richard's heart pounded. This was the past. He was standing in a memory of the manor. And then, a scream. Blood splattered across the ballroom floor. Richard's breath hitched. The guests continued dancing, completely unfazed, but their bodies were rotting, skin peeling, eyes sunken, limbs hanging unnaturally. And then, in the center of the room, a man with a slit throat locked eyes with him. His mouth moved, forming silent words. Richard understood. Run. Richard bolted upstairs. The walls began to bleed. The wooden panels warped, faces pushing through the wallpaper, moaning in agony. The house was alive, and now, it knew he could see it. A shadow loomed at the end of the hall. A man with a noose around his neck. He whispered, "You shouldn't be here, Doctor." The next second, Richard was falling. The floor beneath him collapsed, and he plummeted into darkness. Richard awoke on the cold stone floor of an underground chamber. The air was thick with decay. Torches flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows on rusted iron doors. Whispers slithered through the darkness. Slowly, Richard pushed himself to his feet and realized he wasn't alone. Row after row of corpses stood in the chamber, their eyes wide open, staring at him. They moved in unison, heads tilting, then one by one they began to smile. Richard backed away, only to feel a cold hand grip his ankle. He screamed, kicking away, but the corpse didn't let go. A whisper crawled into his ear. "You don't belong here, but now you can never leave." The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him, the corpses laughing, and somewhere beyond the shadows, something much, much worse, waiting. Richard's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His hands trembled as he gripped the damp stone walls, the darkness of the underground chamber pressing in on him like a coffin. The corpses that had laughed at him moments ago were gone, or had they ever been there? A low whisper crawled through the air. "You are not alone." Richard turned sharply, but the passage was empty. Still, the feeling of watching eyes crept along his skin. He had to find a way out. Stumbling forward, he followed the faint glow of flickering torches. The path twisted and turned like a labyrinth. The walls etched with names, names of the dead. His heart pounded when he saw his own name, carved into the stone. Dr. Richard Holt, 1893. A cold dread sank into his bones. The house had already written his fate. The tunnel widened into a massive circular chamber. The air was thick with the scent of rotting flesh. At the center stood an altar of bones, covered in strange markings. Surrounding it were twisted relics, dolls with hollow eyes, rusted knives, old portraits with faces scratched out. Richard took a step forward, and the walls groaned. A shadow peeled itself from the stone. It had no eyes, no mouth, just a void of swirling blackness in the shape of a man. It raised a bony hand and pointed directly at him. "Leave." Richard's body locked in place. Then a horrific scream erupted from behind him. Spinning around, his breath caught in his throat. A corpse was crawling toward him. Its face was half-eaten, eyes milky white, fingers digging into the stone, and it was whispering his name. "Richard. Richard. Richard." On the altar, something caught his eye. An old, tattered book bound in human skin. Something about it called to him. He hesitated, then reached out. As his fingers touched the cover, the room exploded with whispers. The torches blew out. Darkness engulfed everything. And then, Richard wasn't in the underground anymore. He was somewhere else. Somewhere far worse. A long, endless hallway stretched before him. The walls pulsed like they were alive. Doors lined the corridor, each one slightly open, revealing glimpses of unspeakable horrors. A woman sobbing hysterically in a rocking chair, her face hidden behind her hair. A child standing in the corner of a room, whispering to something unseen. A man hammering nails into his own eyes. Richard's stomach churned. Then from the end of the hallway, he saw a mirror. His own reflection stood there. But it wasn't him. The reflection grinned wickedly, and then it stepped out of the glass. Richard turned to run, but the doors burst open. Hands clawed at him, dragging him back inside. Richard woke up gasping for air. He was back in the manor's drawing room. Had it all been a dream? Claire was sitting across from him, pale as a ghost. "You touched the book," she said in a trembling voice. Richard's throat was dry. What was it? Claire's hands clenched into fists. That book belongs to them. Richard's blood ran cold. The spirits? Claire shook her head. No, the ones that command the spirits. Richard felt like the room was closing in on him. He had awakened something much, much worse. And now it was coming for him. Richard hadn't slept. Not that sleep would have helped. Even outside the manor, the ghosts were watching. He saw them in reflections, in windows, in the corner of his eye. A woman in a tattered white dress stood across the street when he went into town. A child with hollow eyes followed him at a distance, whispering his name. And worst of all, a man with no face stood at the foot of his bed. When he tried to rest, he was never alone, and he was never safe. That night, Richard tried to fight his exhaustion, but as soon as he closed his eyes, hands shot out from beneath the bed. Rotting fingers wrapped around his throat. He kicked and thrashed, gasping for breath. The hands were pulling him under. Through the darkness, through the floorboards, into something endless. He saw glimpses of the other side, people hanging from ropes, eyes peering from cracks in the walls, a woman sobbing blood. Then, a voice whispered in his ear, "You don't belong to yourself anymore." Richard screamed and woke up on the floor. His throat burned, his body covered in bruises. It wasn't a dream. They had tried to take him. Richard packed his bags. He had to leave. He didn't care about the research, the money, or the mystery. He just wanted to live. But as he walked down the path leading away from the house, he found himself back at the front door. He tried again and again. But no matter where he walked, he always ended up back at the manor. He was trapped. The house had claimed him. Desperate, he turned to Claire. "We need answers," she said. She pulled out an old, dust-covered spirit board. Richard hesitated, but he had no choice. They lit candles, sat in a circle, and placed their hands on the planchette. The air grew colder. Claire whispered, "Spirits of the house, we call upon you." Nothing happened. Then the candles flickered violently. The planchette began moving on its own. HELP. Richard swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The board spelled CLARA. Claire's face went pale. "My great-grandmother." Richard's stomach twisted. "She's warning us." Then, the board moved again. THEYCOME. The room shook, the candles blew out, and from the darkness, the shadows began moving. A deep, guttural growl filled the air. Not a ghost. Something older. Something worse. The spirits weren't the ones haunting the manor. They were trapped, just like Richard. Something darker, ancient, and hungry controlled them. And now it had set its sights on him. The walls began to bleed. The whispers became screams. Richard and Claire ran for their lives. But the house was alive now, and it wasn't letting them go. The walls pulsed like breathing, flesh. The ceiling stretched higher, twisting into a black void. Richard and Claire ran down the hall, but the hallway never ended. Doors opened on their own, revealing horrors within. A woman dangling from the ceiling, her neck twisted unnaturally. A child ripping its own face apart, over and over again. A mirror where Richard's reflection was still staring at him, even after he turned away. The house was breaking reality. There was no escape, because the manor wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it was hungry. From the shadows, something emerged. A grotesque, towering figure with stretched limbs, empty sockets where eyes should be, and a mouth that was too wide. The air turned to ice. Claire clutched her chest, gasping. "It's here." Richard's voice barely came out. "What? What is it?" Claire's eyes filled with horror. The thing that created this place, the thing that feeds on it. The entity tilted its head. Then it lunged. Richard barely dodged. The walls screamed. The house was closing in. If they didn't stop it now, it would consume them. Claire fumbled through her great-grandmother's journal. "There's a way to bind it," she whispered. "But there's a price." Richard's pulse pounded. "What price?" Claire swallowed hard. "A life for a life." Richard froze. One of them had to die to seal the entity. The house shook violently. The entity was getting closer. Richard's mind raced. Could they trick it? Could they find another way? Then a voice echoed from the walls. "One of you must stay." Claire stepped forward. Richard's heart dropped. "No," he whispered. She smiled sadly. "I was never supposed to leave this house. It's my family's curse." The entity snarled. It could sense what was coming. Claire cut her palm, letting the blood drip onto the floor. The air shimmered. The entity roared, twisting in agony. The walls began to collapse, folding inward. Claire looked at Richard one last time. "Run." Richard hesitated. Then he turned and ran. Richard stumbled outside just as the manor imploded. The walls caved inward. The roof collapsed, and then it was gone. Nothing but ashes and silence. Richard fell to his knees. Claire was gone. But had it worked? He looked down. The scar on his palm, Claire's final touch, was still there. And then a whisper in his ear. "I never left." Richard's blood turned to ice. The manor was gone, but the curse had followed him, and it would never stop. Charlotte Carter leaned against the window of the cramped van, watching as the dusty roads of Mexico stretched before them. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. She sighed, turning to her best friend Rachel Adams, who was busy scrolling through her phone. "Why are we even here?" Charlotte muttered. Rachel smirked. "Because it's spring break, and we need to have fun before life ruins us." Noah Bennett, Charlotte's longtime crush, chuckled from the driver's seat. "Relax, Charlotte. A little adventure never killed anyone." "Yeah, right," Ethan Collins added, cracking open a beer. "Until it does." The group laughed, unaware that their lives would soon become a nightmare. That night, after a few too many drinks at a rundown bar, they met Damien Voss. He was sitting, alone, his sharp eyes scanning the room like he was hunting for something. "You kids looking for a real thrill?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. Rachel, always eager for something reckless, leaned in. "Depends. What do you have in mind?" "A game?" Damien said, smiling. "A special version of Truth or Dare." Charlotte felt an unease settle in her stomach. "We can play that anywhere. What's so special about yours?" Damien's eyes glinted, because this one is played in a place where the dead still listen. The church was old, abandoned and cursed. Its walls were covered in ancient symbols, and the pews were rotting. Charlotte swore she could hear whispers from the dark corners. They sat in a circle, the candlelight flickering unnaturally. Damien pulled out a small, rusted knife and sliced his palm open, letting the blood drip onto a strange wooden box. "This game has rules," he said. 1. Always tell the truth. 2. Always complete the dare. 3. If you refuse, you die. Group chuckled nervously. "Let's start," Damien said, his smile too wide, too unnatural. He turned to Ethan. "Truth or dare?" Ethan, still smirking, leaned back. "Dare, obviously." Damien's grin widened. "Cut your arm, deep enough to leave a scar." Ethan's smirk vanished. "What?" "You heard me." The air grew thick, suffocating. The candle flames turned blue. Something shifted in the shadows. Ethan laughed nervously. "Fine, whatever." He grabbed the knife, pressing it against his arm. But the moment he hesitated, the whispers in the church grew louder. And then his own hand jerked forward, forcing the blade deep into his skin. The group screamed as blood poured down his arm. Charlotte grabbed his hand. "Ethan, stop! I didn't do that!" Ethan gasped, his face pale. Damien only watched, his smile never fading. "Your turn, Charlotte," he whispered. Charlotte gulped. "Truth." Damien's eyes darkened. "What is your deepest regret?" Charlotte's breath hitched. Her mind flooded with memories she had buried. Memories of her sister's accident, the night she should have been home instead of sneaking out. Her voice shook. "I should have been there." The whispers stopped. The air felt normal again. Rachel, noticing Charlotte's shaken state, tried to laugh it off. "Okay, my turn, dare!" Damien's head tilted. "Steal something from the altar." Rachel, rolling her eyes, marched up to the old altar and grabbed a rusty, blackened chalice. The moment her fingers touched it, the walls groaned. A door slammed shut. Even though no wind had blown, Damien stood up. "The game is now yours." And then he vanished into the darkness. Back at their motel, no one could sleep. Rachel tossed and turned, sweat dripping down her face. Then the whispers returned. Rachel sat up, her eyes wide and unfocused. Her lips curled into a horrific, twisted smile. "Truth or dare?" she whispered. Charlotte, startled awake, gasped. "What?" Rachel's head snapped to the side, her grin too wide, her eyes pitch black. "Truth or dare, Charlotte?" Charlotte backed up. "Stop messing around, Rachel." Rachel twitched violently, her limbs moving unnaturally. "Choose, Charlotte." Charlotte's heart pounded. "Truth." Rachel's jaw cracked open unnaturally, and her voice overlapped with something deeper, something inhuman. "Do you want to die?" Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. "No." Rachel suddenly collapsed, gasping for breath. The room went still. A phone buzzed. It was from Ethan. A single message. "I refused. Help." Charlotte and Noah rushed to his room, only to find him hanging from the ceiling fan, his mouth stitched shut. A message was carved into his chest. You must always play, Rachel screamed. The game was real, and it was only just beginning. Ethan's lifeless body swayed from the ceiling fan, his skin pale, his mouth stitched shut with something that looked like shadow instead of thread. Rachel screamed, collapsing onto the floor. Noah grabbed Charlotte's hand, pulling her away from the horrific sight. We have to get out of here. Charlotte was frozen in shock. He refused, she whispered. Noah ran to the door, but it slammed shut on its own. Rachel was shaking violently. I didn't mean to steal the chalice. We didn't mean to play this game. Suddenly, Ethan's phone buzzed. A new message appeared on his screen. It's your turn, Rachel. Truth or dare? Rachel's breath hitched. No, 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 no. Her own phone vibrated. Another message. Choose, now. Rachel dropped the phone, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to play anymore. The lights flickered violently, and a shadow crawled up the wall, taking the shape of something not human. Charlotte grabbed Rachel. You have to answer, Rachel sobbed. Truth. The whispers grew louder, laughing, whispering, hissing. Then the message changed. What secret have you kept from your friends? Rachel's face went pale. No. Please, not this. The whispers became deafening. A hand shot out of Ethan's mouth, black and twisted, clawing its way free. Rachel! Answer it! Noah shouted. Rachel covered her ears, crying. I slept with Noah. Silence. Charlotte's stomach dropped. She turned to Noah, who looked just as shocked. You what? Rachel's lips trembled. Charlotte, Suddenly, Ethan's body jerked violently. His eyes snapped open, but they were pitch black. A voice, not his, crawled out of his mouth. Your turn, Noah. Truth or dare? Noah stumbled backward, his face pale. Dare. The shadows shifted, forming words on the motel wall. Break her arm. Charlotte's blood ran cold. What? Noah froze, shaking his head. No, I won't do it. A loud, wet snap filled the air. Rachel screamed, clutching her twisted, broken arm, which had bent at an impossible angle. Noah hadn't touched her. Charlotte gagged at the sight. Oh my God! Rachel collapsed, gasping in pain. The message updated. On the wall. The game does not wait. Noah was trembling. I didn't do it! Charlotte's heart pounded. You don't have to. It does it for you if you hesitate. Rachel's breath shuddered. I can't do this. I can't play anymore. The lights flickered again. The message changed. Charlotte, truth or dare? Charlotte's throat was dry. She had no choice. If she hesitated, it would kill her like Ethan. Truth, she whispered. The phone buzzed again. What is your worst fear? Charlotte felt something crawl over her skin. Her worst fear? She had plenty. Losing control, losing her friends, dying alone. But before she could answer, the mirror on the motel wall changed. Instead of her reflection, she saw herself, but twisted. Her mirror self was grinning unnaturally, her eyes bleeding black, her hands covered in blood. Her own voice echoed from the mirror. You already know what your worst fear is. It's becoming me. Charlotte staggered back, her chest heaving. No, that's not real. The mirror shattered, shards flying everywhere. Charlotte screamed, covering her face. Rachel and Noah pulled her back, just as the floor began to crack, something rising from underneath. A voice slithered out. Noah, truth or dare? Noah clenched, his fists. Dare. The message appeared in blood on the motel ceiling. Burn her alive. The three of them froze. Rachel started sobbing. No, no, please. Noah shook his head violently. I won't. A low, guttural laugh echoed from the walls. The lamp on the nightstand suddenly overheated, the bulb exploding. Sparks flew into the curtains, which caught fire instantly. The flames spread unnaturally fast, chasing Rachel. She screamed, scrambling away, but the fire moved like it was alive, cornering her. Charlotte tried to reach her, but something invisible held her back. Rachel turned to Noah, her face filled with horror. Noah, do something! Noah tried to grab her hand, but it was too late. The flames engulfed her, and her screams echoed through the room as her skin melted away, leaving behind only a charred skeleton. The fire vanished instantly, leaving behind only the smell of burning flesh. The game had taken another player. Charlotte was sobbing uncontrollably. Noah stared blankly at the wall, his face pale, his hands shaking. Then the phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. Round 3 begins. Noah's phone vibrated violently. Charlotte. Truth or dare? Charlotte choked on her own breath. The whispers grew louder, shadows crawled up the walls, and the lights dimmed. She had survived 2 rounds, but could she make it to the end? The motel felt alive. The walls breathed, the shadows twisted, and whispers hissed from the cracks in the floor. Charlotte's phone vibrated violently in her trembling hand. A new message appeared on the screen. Charlotte. Truth or dare? Her mouth was dry. Noah was still in shock, staring at Rachel's charred remains, his hands shaking. Charlotte turned to him, her voice a broken whisper. I don't want to play anymore. Noah swallowed hard. You have to. The room grew colder. The ceiling cracked, black liquid seeping through, dripping onto the floor. The phone buzzed again. Charlotte. Choose. Now. Charlotte bit her lip so hard it bled. Truth was dangerous. Dares were worse. But there was no way out. She took a shaky breath. Dare. The room fell silent. Then, words began forming on the wall, scratched in as if by invisible. Claws. Bury him alive. Charlotte's stomach dropped. What? Noah's head snapped toward her, his face twisted in horror. No, no, Charlotte, please. The motel shook violently, the floor cracking apart beneath them. A gaping hole opened up in the center of the room. A grave, freshly dug. Noah staggered backward. You're not really going to do it, right? Charlotte's hands trembled. I can't. A sudden force yanked Noah off his feet, dragging him toward the pit. He clawed at the floor, his fingers splitting open, blood smeared across the wooden panels. Charlotte! He screamed. Charlotte lunged forward, grabbing his arm, but something invisible yanked harder. Noah's eyes were wide with pure terror. Please, he whispered. But Charlotte couldn't stop it. The moment she let go, Noah plummeted into the grave, his screams cutting off instantly as the dirt poured in on its own, burying him alive. The whispers grew louder, laughing, mocking. Charlotte's phone buzzed again. A new message. Good girl. Round 4 begins. Charlotte collapsed, her whole body shaking. She was alone. Noah was gone, Rachel was dead, Ethan was dead, and the game wasn't over. Her phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. 1 player remains. The final round begins soon. Charlotte's breath hitched. The final round? What did that mean? She scrambled to her feet, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The motel door swung open, revealing the outside world. A road, a car, the town in the distance. Was she free? Her body screamed for her to run, but something felt wrong. She stepped outside. The moment her foot touched the ground, her phone buzzed one last time. A new message appeared. You didn't think you could escape, did you? The car vanished. The road disintegrated into darkness. The motel shifted, stretching into something unnatural. Charlotte screamed as the world melted away. She was never leaving, because the game never ended. Charlotte was back in the motel room, but it wasn't the same. It was worse. The walls were covered in blood-stained messages, written in dozens of different handwritings. Help me. I can't escape. The game doesn't stop. They're all dead. The whispers surrounded her, 1,000 voices overlapping. Charlotte backed up against the wall, clutching her head. Her phone vibrated. A new message. Charlotte. Truth or dare? Her stomach twisted. She was the only player left. What happened when there was only one? Her throat was dry. Truth. The room went silent. Then the final message appeared. Are you ready to take my place? Charlotte's blood ran cold. What? The whispers grew louder, laughing, shrieking, hissing. The ceiling split open, and something began crawling down the walls. Something with too many arms, too many faces, too many smiles. Charlotte screamed as the shadows closed in, her phone slipping from her hand. The screen flickered, one last message appearing before everything went black. Welcome to the game, Charlotte. You're the new host now. Charlotte woke up somewhere else. Not the motel, not the real world. This place was nothing. Endless blackness stretched in every direction. The air was thick, suffocating, like she was trapped underwater. She tried to move, but her body wasn't her own anymore. Her hands felt different. Her skin felt wrong. And then she saw it, a mirror, standing alone in the void. Her reflection wasn't hers anymore. It was someone else or something else. Her lips moved on their own. Welcome to the game. Charlotte staggered backward, her breath ragged. No, this isn't real. But it was. The game had claimed her. She wasn't a player anymore. She was the host. And the next round was about to begin. A new message appeared in the void. A phone materialized in Charlotte's hands, the screen glowing eerily. The text read, "Would you like to see how it all began?" Charlotte hesitated. Then, the world shifted. She was somewhere new. A town, but not her town. The buildings were older, the people dressed in clothes from another era, a schoolyard. Children laughed and played, oblivious to the horror that would one day consume this place. Charlotte felt her body move on its own, like she was being dragged through time. A boy stood alone at the edge of the playground. James. Charlotte knew his name somehow. He was the first player. And this was the first game. A group of kids surrounded James, their faces twisted with cruel delight. "Come on, James," a boy sneered. "Truth or dare?" James swallowed hard. "Dare," the lead boy grinned wickedly. "I dare you to break into Old Man Carver's house." The kids gasped. No one went into Carver's house. It was cursed, but James was desperate to belong. So he did it. And that was the moment the game changed forever. Charlotte was dragged forward in time, her surroundings shifting like a dream warping into a nightmare. James wasn't a boy anymore. He was an adult now, but something was wrong. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow and haunted, and he wasn't alone. A figure stood behind him, half hidden in the shadows, a man with blackened eyes and a smile that didn't belong on a human face. Mr. Carver. Charlotte felt her body freeze in terror. Because Carver wasn't human. He was the first host, and he had chosen James to replace him, just like Charlotte had been chosen now. Charlotte tried to scream, but the world was collapsing around her. The phone in her hand buzzed violently, a new message appearing. Truth or dare. The words burned into her vision as the void swallowed her whole. Charlotte woke up back in the motel, but this time, she wasn't alone. The other hosts were there. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All the people who had ever been trapped in the game. Some had lost their faces. Some had become shadows. Some had been twisted beyond recognition, and all of them were whispering. The same thing, you can't escape. You can only pass it on. Charlotte's breath hitched. She refused to accept that. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to break the game. But she had one problem. If she tried, the game would fight back, and the next round was about to begin. Charlotte sat on the motel floor, surrounded by whispering figures, the previous hosts. Their hollow eyes pierced into her soul, their voices scraping against reality. You can't win, they whispered. You can only pass it on. Charlotte's hands clenched into fists. No, she refused to become like them. She refused to let the game win. Her mind raced. There had to be a loophole. What if she didn't just play the game? What if she broke it? She lifted her phone. A new message appeared. Next round begins in 60 seconds. She had 1 minute to figure out a way to turn the game against itself, and then the phone rang. Charlotte hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, she answered. A voice whispered through the speaker. Truth or dare? She took a breath. Truth. Pause. Then the voice asked, Are you afraid to die? Her pulse pounded. Charlotte was afraid, but she couldn't show it. No. The phone screen glitched violently. The figures around her lurched back, as if her answer had done something they didn't expect. For the first time, the game seemed uncertain. Charlotte felt a flicker of hope. She was onto something, but the game wasn't going to let her win so easily. The motel began to change. The walls stretched and twisted, as if the building itself was alive. The figures of the past hosts screamed in agony, their forms melting into shadows. And then the motel disappeared. Charlotte found herself standing in her childhood home, except it wasn't right. The air was too cold. The furniture was rotting. And at the end of the hallway, her mother stood there, except her eyes were missing. Charlotte staggered, backward, her stomach twisting with horror. Mom? Her mother tilted her head unnaturally. Then, in a voice that wasn't hers, she whispered, Truth or dare? Charlotte's breath hitched. This wasn't real. It was the game's way of breaking her mind. If she lost control, if she let fear win, the game would consume her. She had to fight. Dare, Charlotte whispered. Her mother's smile widened. The house shook violently. And then Charlotte was falling into the void. Charlotte landed somewhere dark. She was no longer in the house, no longer in the motel. She was inside the game itself. This was its true form, a place where reality and nightmare blurred into one. Figures moved in the shadows, whispering, laughing, waiting for her to break. And then, from the darkness, a familiar face appeared. Lucas. Charlotte's heart stopped. Lucas, her best friend, the one who had died in the game's first round. He was standing right in front of her, except something was wrong. His eyes were hollow, his skin was gray, and he was smiling. Charlotte, he whispered. It's not so bad here. You'll get used to it. Charlotte's blood turned to ice. The game was using Lucas against her, trying to make her give up. But she wasn't going to. She stepped forward. "Lucas, if you're really in there, tell me how to stop this." His smile faltered. For a split second, something human flickered in his eyes. Then, he whispered, "There's only one way, Charlotte." She leaned in, barely breathing. "You have to become the host forever, or destroy the game completely." Charlotte's heart pounded. There was a way to end this, but could she do it? And if she tried, would the game let her live? Charlotte felt the game closing in. She had to act fast. She had two options: pass the curse on to someone else, becoming free, but dooming another player. Destroy the game completely, but risk losing herself in the process. She stared at Lucas. She knew what he wanted her to do. Destroy it. For him. For everyone who had suffered before her. She took a breath and made her choice. The phone in her hand buzzed one last time. The screen flickered. Then, everything exploded into light. Charlotte felt herself being ripped apart. The game screamed. The void collapsed. And then silence. Charlotte opened her eyes. She was no longer in the motel. No longer in the void. She was inside the game's core. A place that should not exist. The world around her was endless, shifting, alive. Glowing symbols floated in the air, twisting like they were whispering to her. The floor beneath her feet was made of fractured reality, reflections of every victim the game had ever claimed. She saw their faces in the glass beneath her feet. Some she knew, most she didn't. But one face made her freeze. Lucas. His reflection stared up at her, his mouth moving silently. Charlotte crouched down, pressing her fingers against the surface. Lucas? And then his hand shot out of the reflection, grabbing her wrist. She screamed, stumbling backward, Lucas's face twisted in pain. "Charlotte," he gasped, "you have to end it." The world around her shook violently. The game was aware of her presence. Here. It wasn't going to let her go. A voice boomed from the darkness. Low, deep, ancient. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You shouldn't be here, Charlotte." Charlotte's breath hitched. The game was talking to her. For the first time, it was treating her as a threat. She straightened her spine, forcing confidence into her voice. "I'm ending you." The game laughed, a sick, distorted sound that made her skin crawl. "You think you can kill me? I am older than you, stronger than you. I have consumed thousands of souls. You are nothing." The world rippled. The air grew heavy, pressing down on her like a weight. And then, the game gave her an offer. "You can walk away, Charlotte." Her heart skipped a beat. "Pass me on. Give me a new host. You can live." Charlotte clenched her fists. It was lying. It just wanted to survive. She had to end it now, or it would go on forever. Lucas's voice whispered in her head, "The only way to end the game is to trap it inside something else." Charlotte's eyes widened. A prison. If she couldn't destroy the game, she could lock it away forever. Her mind raced. The game needed a physical form, something to contain its curse. Her phone buzzed violently. She looked down, and she realized the phone itself was the key. The game had lived inside it this whole time. If she could trap it inside permanently, with no new players, it would die. But how? She needed a ritual. She needed to rewrite the rules, and she only had one chance before the game crushed her completely. The game sensed her plan. It screamed in fury, the entire world shattering apart. Charlotte fell through the void, hitting the ground hard. She was back in the real world, the motel room. Her phone was buzzing uncontrollably. On the screen. Final round. Truth or dare? Charlotte's hands shook. This was it. The final question. If she answered wrong, she was dead. She took a shaky breath, and then she whispered, "Truth." The phone screen glitched violently. The words changed. The game asked, "Do you want to live?" Charlotte's heartbeat pounded. She knew this was a trap. If she said yes, the game would force her to pass it on. If she said no, it would kill her instantly. She had to break the cycle. Her hands trembled, and then she made a new rule. "I don't play by your rules anymore." The game screamed. Her phone shattered in her hands. The world rippled violently, and the game began to collapse. Charlotte staggered backward as the motel room shook. Shadows poured out of the phone's broken pieces, twisting and screeching in agony. The previous hosts appeared, their forms dissolving into light. Lucas stood among them. For the first time, his eyes looked human. He gave Charlotte a soft, sad smile. "You did it." Tears burned in her eyes. "Are you free now?" she whispered. Lucas nodded. "We all are." And then he faded away. The game was gone. The curse was broken. Charlotte collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. For the first time in days, there was silence. Charlotte left the motel as the sun began to rise. She looked at her new phone, one she had bought after destroying the cursed one. No messages, no buzzing, just peace. She took a deep breath, letting the reality sink in. She had survived. The game was over. But in the back of her mind, a tiny voice whispered, what if the game wasn't truly gone? What if it was waiting for a new way in? Charlotte shook the thought away. For now, she was free. But if the game ever returned, she would be ready.